Welcome into Inside the Texans. Chancellor Johnson inside of the newsroom right now. Randy McAvoy, our sports director, who was in Dallas last night for the Monday night matchup between the Texans and the Dallas Cowboys, also joins us. And right now, he's out there in Huntsville making a stop, checking in on the Bearcats as well. But Randy, you were at the game yesterday in Jerry's World. The Texans move on to 7-4 after a dominant performance on really both sides of the football.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Chancellor, they went into this game, you know it as well. This is a stretch starting with the Cowboys last night in Arlington and in the next two games against, Tennessee and Jacksonville. This is a three-game stretch that they can right the ship and pile up Tennessee and Jacksonville. This is a three-game stretch that they can right the ship and pile up some wins for starters and get the mojo back that had been missing over the last month. I think everybody was a little surprised at some struggles they've been having over the last month, losing 3 out of 4, but they were still in good shape in the division race, so you kind of pushed that to the side and said, okay, in time they're going to get things figured out. No better time than last night against a Dallas Cowboys team that's simply reeling this season on both sides of the line, offense, defense, and the Texans attacked those weaknesses. We talked about some things they could do yesterday leading up to kickoff, and they did that. I mean, offensively, they rode Joe Mixon. He had a big game against a poor rushing defense. Nico Collins was back. They scored in the second half. I mean, they checked all the boxes, Chancellor. It was a good bounce-back day, and hopefully they can start building off of that moving forward now.
Randy, I called it a get-right game. That's exactly what it was. As you mentioned, facing a reeling Dallas Cowboys team that has so many issues, starting up top with their owner in Jerry Jones, all the way down to some of their roster there. Of course, they were missing Dak Prescott. Cooper Rush filled in for the Cowboys at the quarterback position, threw the ball 55 times, and the Houston Texans defense, they got after him. It was really a dominant defensive performance. Derek Stingley Jr., which I want to talk about him a little bit more later on in the show. He had the task of shutting down CeeDee Lamb, one of the more elite wide receivers in this game, and he did exactly just that. The pass rush, minus Will Anderson Jr., who was still out nursing that ankle injury, and they didn't even need him because they were able to put pressure on the quarterback, notably in the second half of the ball game, get after Cooper Rush. They were able to slow down that running game as well. And offensively, as you mentioned, the formula to me is pretty much simple, and I think moving forward, this is going to be it. Ride Joe Mixon as far as giving him the ball and letting him go to work. Offensively, the offensive line was able to make a push on that front line there, and he was able to go for over 100 yards in this ball game and a hat trick, 3 touchdowns in that ball game. And I loved even the celebration hitting the Cowboys with that too small gesture as well. And of course, the Houston Texans welcomed the return of their star wide receiver Nico Collins. Boy, has he been missed over the past 5 weeks. And immediately on the very first play of the game, you saw his impact. A 71-yard touchdown that was ultimately called back, but he showed that burst, he showed that speed coming off that hamstring injury. And so the Houston Texans now, of course, in that game, going to 7-4 in the season. And as you mentioned, they now have continued that stretch of a pretty weak schedule, taking on back-to-back games in the Jaguars and the Titans first here at NRG Stadium this Sunday. But the Houston Texans are in a really good spot right now, and they can have some momentum as they get ready for the bye 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, no doubt. You take care of business in these next two now. They got it done last night against the Dallas Cowboys to get to 7-4. No reason why they can't now be 9-4 in 2 weeks. You've got to be able to not play down to the competition. Tennessee Titans, let's face it, they're terrible. Jacksonville Jaguars are awful. You've got to just put your foot down on the pedal and take care of business, get to 9-4. You see the full screen final score, of course, and the numbers that stand out. Stroud, 23 of 34, 257 yards, 1 interception, so didn't find the end zone, although he hit Nico Collins early in the game to start the game, but of course that was called back. It was not a touchdown after the penalty. But Mixon, Chancellor, as you mentioned, 20 totes, 109 yards in the trifecta with those 3 touchdowns. I really like the fact that, man, from the get-go, they bounced back after that touchdown was called back. And that opening drive, they just continued to march it down. and just kept feeding number 28, man. Let Joe Mixon eat, as they say, and the O-line was opened up space for him. 109. You had to do that against this Dallas rush defense. They were giving up like 152 yards a game on the ground, so you had to establish that. Texans certainly did that last night. And you see the numbers on Nico, 4 catches for 54 yards. So, he eased back in, came out of that healthy, which was the main thing, and there's no kinds of setback or anything like that. So Nico Collins, man, it was great to have him back. And I mean, what a weapon you've got, because they had to get by without him for 5 weeks, and we saw the struggles with this offense. So credit the offense, Chancellor, in the second half. We were talking at halftime in the press box last night, and what was it, 17-10 at halftime, I think, and we were saying, okay, what offense are we going to see in the second half, Bobby Slowick? And, man, you know what? They got the field goal, and then they got the touchdown later. They got a defensive touchdown, so they got points on the board. And I was asking some of the guys in the locker room, Titus Howard, matter of fact, I was interviewing Titus Howard, and I said, has that been on your mind? And he admitted it had been. He said, but we all know we were good enough to just turn the corner and get back to the way we were playing earlier in the year. But he was happy they kind of checked that box last night, got some points on the board, and can now put that behind him when it comes to the second half.
Yeah, the game ball ended up going to Joe Mixon, and naturally, when you have 3 touchdowns, it's really hard to do. I think he's the 4th Houston Texan to do that in franchise history. So Joe Mixon stole the show on Monday night, but I think the credit has to go to the offensive line. As you mentioned, Randy, they had been criticized, and fairly so, over the past few weeks, pretty much all season long, with their lack of being able to protect C.J. Stroud for most of the season. But I thought for the most part they were able to do that on Monday night, including against one of the best edge rushers in the National Football League in Micah Parsons. They were able to keep C.J. Stroud clean for the most part, and then of course they were able to do what they have been able to do for most of the season, and that's run the rock. Joe Mixon, 20 carries, 109 yards, and even early on, his first touchdown of the game, it popped off for 45 yards for that touchdown. So not just running the ball, methodically, but explosive runs as well, and that's what you really want to see from this Houston Texans offense, because it opens up so much other stuff. We were able to see a little bit more of those chunk pass plays that's been missing over the past few weeks, with C.J. Stroud being able to connect with Nico Collins, as we saw so often early on the season, across the middle. It opened things up for some of the other wide receivers as well. Tank Dell was able to have, I believe, 4 catches for 54 yards. John Mitchell III continued to make an impact. He didn't have, look at the stat sheet, it might not have been a huge number, but I believe it was like 35 or so yards, continuing to build off of the week that he had the previous week as well. He was a target, and so that's something that the Houston Texans, going back to John Mechie, they've been asking for somebody else to step up and help out both Nico Collins and Tank Dell, especially with their star wide receiver and Stephon Diggs done for the season. And Mechie has started to make an impact in back-to-back games. And of course, we're in the middle of the season right now, and the Houston Texans are firmly, have a strong grip on the division, and they should make the playoffs easily. But you want to see them continue to build good habits and see how they can get better each and every single week. So seeing a guy like John Mitchell III continue to make contributions, this is a step in the right direction for the Houston Texans, once again, as they look ahead to these next couple of weeks, which should go like what we saw on Monday night against the Cowboys. As far as their next 2 opponents are concerned, Tennessee, they are 2-8. Jacksonville, 2-9. These teams have won a combined games of 4 total this season. They should be able to dominate and go into that by 9-4.
Yeah, no doubt, because the schedule is going to get a lot tougher after this stretch, and you need to pile up those wins, because when December rolls around, they've got some big tests coming up. But you're right, the postseason is going to happen. They got to be right in all phases when that time comes, coming up in early January. All right, we've got some sound coming in from last night at AT&T Stadium. Let's begin with the head coach. Let's roll some sound from D'Amico Ryans.
To come out, have that score, have a callback, and to stick with it and still be able to score. How important is that to still get in the end zone?
Well, I really love that first play because it showed what we could do in this game. So even though it got called back, I just told all our guys, hey, we can go score on these guys again. Just get it in your mind, we're going to score again. Like, we can move the football on people when we execute the right way. So I love that first play. I hated that it got called back, but I was excited just to see us make that big play that we've been looking for.
From Jalen Petrie, the kind of impact he makes as a hitter. What does that do for you as an entire team, not just the defense?
Yeah, Jalen is a physical player. Really, he played physical all night, played really well in coverage, and very active. He's been playing really good football for us. Instinctive player. It's, him down in the box, making a lot of plays, being active. Really love what he provides to our team.
You talked in the week about how important it was for Houston fans for this particular game. Can you talk about how they showed up here in the city?
It was awesome seeing all our Texans fans show up, right? That was really cool to see on the road, to see all the Texans jerseys, to see how fired up our fans were, created some crowd noise. Man, that's cool. Anytime you can come in an away stadium and really feel your fans, hear your fans, all right, being loud, being disruptive, that was really cool for our guys.
Is there something you could put your finger on for the defense, especially the defensive line? Didn't get any hits in the first half, but then obviously they finished strong. Is there one particular thing you could put on that maybe changed from the first half to the second half?
Well, we just made some few adjustments there with the D-line and D. Hunter. He cut it loose in the second half, right? And did a really good job. Thought our guys did a better job of just executing, right, the stunts and everything that we were asking them to do. Switched up a few things, but they executed it really well.
We got time for two more. What was the plan with Nico, and was it more so getting him back into game shape, or was it just didn't want to rush him back all the way right away first game back?
We were excited to get Nico back. Really loved the plan that he had, and he showed up and made an impact play for us, the first play of the game, right? And so I'm happy to have him back. I thought our guys did a good job of, managing him, giving him the proper snaps that he needed, and we know it's his first week back. He's not going to have a full workload on his first week back.
That was head coach D'Amico Ryans after the Houston Texans' dominant win over the Dallas Cowboys, moving to 7-4 on the season. Now, Randy, you were there for the game, and it got started off in an eventful manner. They had a panel fall from the roof before the game even started. The game and the stadium in Jersey was supposed to be open. They had to close it because of that, with that panel falling. And then we saw a Texans take over, a lot of red in the stands there. How many Texans fans, did you run into while you were up in Arlington?
Oh, man, a bunch. Actually, on the trip up, it started because after you and I did Sports Sunday night, I drove part of the way to Madisonville, of course, home of Buc-ee's right there. And the place was packed on Monday morning when I woke up before I continued on to Arlington. Man, it was full of Texans fans. I went in just to get something to drink and eat, and fans were just talking Texans with me. It was crazy. So I had a feeling we were going to see a lot more. That was a trend. And, of course, when you got there to the stadium, once the fans started coming in, man, you're just like, yeah, this is a Texans takeover. I think a lot of Cowboy fans, with the way the season's going there with the Cowboys, unloaded their tickets. But, it was really loud. You could hear the cheering and the booing on bad calls last night when their Texans were involved. So it was like, you could hear it from the press box clearly. And, man, tons of red, especially on the lower bowl. Man, it was like Texans NRG North, man, at AT&T Stadium. It was really cool to see it. You mentioned the roof, too, because we were doing our early live shots there at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock. The roof was open. All the people saying, yeah, they've made the decision to keep it open tonight. We're like, cool, man, it'll be great. It's perfect weather and everything like that. And then they realized there was an issue with one of the panels or something like that fell down. They said, oops, we can't do that. We're going to close it back up. So indoor football the rest of the night. But definitely a fun night. And they talked about, D'Amico and some of the other guys talked about the support they got from the Texans fan base last night was incredible. Let's get to C.J. Stroud now, Chancellor. He didn't have a touchdown pass, but he was pretty steady. I don't have his numbers in front of me again, 250 plus last night. Had that one interception, and he talked about that afterwards, that it was on him. He owned it. He wasn't pointing fingers or anything like that, but he really praised in his postgame, and we'll hear him in a minute, the job the O-line did, obviously the success the running game had with Joe Mixon across the board, and he talked about the fact that in the second half they were able to get points on the board, and he had never doubted that. He knew that was coming. He said it had been a tough stretch, but last night they answered with that field goal, with that late touchdown from Mixon, the third of the night from Mixon, and, of course, they got the defensive help as well. So all in all, C.J. Stroud's pretty happy. What do you think about his performance?
You know, Randy, I think it's fair to say that C.J. Stroud hasn't played as well as maybe he did his rookie season, and that's okay because you look at the Houston Texans; they are still currently 7-4, and even going back to last night, C.J. Stroud probably could have played a little cleaner, but it's okay that the Houston Texans were able to win in blowout fashion from really another pedestrian night from C.J. Stroud. And I want to be clear, it's not like C.J. Stroud's been bad by any stretch of the means this season, but it's nice that he hasn't had to put on a cape. It's nice that he hasn't had to play hero ball, and it's what a luxury it is to be able to just take your star QB and just say, you know what, just hand the ball off to number 28 and let him go to work. And then you let C.J. Stroud continue to get in a rhythm and just dink and dunk and move the offense down the field methodically. And so when you have that combination, you have that symmetry where both the pass game and the run game is clicking, that's what you really want to see. And once again, we're still in the middle of the season. If this was like maybe, later in the season and they were playing, we got to that portion of their schedule where they were playing, the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Chiefs, and C.J. Stroud, was struggling. That's when I would be a little bit concerned. But right now, where he is right now, I think he still has an opportunity to continue to build, and they're doing it while they're winning. I'm okay with that.
Totally. Hey, C.J. Stroud also at the podium last night after DeMeco Ryans wrapped up. Let's listen in now to the Texans quarterback.
I believe, every game is an opportunity to go out and fix problems. So that was a problem that we had. We got to score more touchdowns, and honestly, we could have been better today in the red zone. So there's always something you can correct and fix. So I'm excited, and blessed to be able to go back to work and be healthy and be able to go back and fix those problems and play the Titans this week.
Close with DJ there. After the Jets game, I remember you saying that you guys need to start playing dominating football. Today, you guys were able to win by your largest margin of victory. How good does it feel to get one of those blowout wins where you guys were able to dominate from start to finish?
Excuse me. Yeah, it's huge, and for me, I don't ever look at it as like a blowout. I look at it as, did we execute one play at a time? And I feel like, to the best of our ability, for me, I missed a couple throws, threw an interception, but those happen, and I got to learn, and I'm learning, like I told y'all during the week, I got to keep swinging, and I just appreciate, them to keep being aggressive, throwing the ball down the field, and I know who I am, and I know I can be a really special person and the best special quarterback in this league, and especially with the guys I have around me. Nick has done a great job putting a great team around, Joe, me, Dog, the O-line, like making the individuals fit as one, and yeah, man, so it's been huge for that, and we're just continue to grow and lean on one another.
And the offensive line, so they challenge themselves to have a big week run blocking for Joe and also protecting you.
Yeah.
What do you think of the job the offensive line did?
Amazing. I was back there chilling a lot of times, and I told Titus had a big opportunity, to play well against Micah, and he was able to do a really good job. I thought we mixed up the protections a lot, pretty well, and there's always things to clean up, but it definitely took a step forward, and that's what we wanted. So, so it was definitely a step forward.
All right, comments from Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud. He's turning the page now, getting ready for their date with the Tennessee Titans coming up on Sunday. All right, we're going to take a quick break here on Inside the Texans. We've got much more. We'll hear from Joe Mixon and also Aaron Wilson and Brian Big Sarge Bearfield weigh in from AT&T Stadium. A lot more to talk about after this Texans victory over the Cowboys when we come back. All right, welcome back to a live edition of Inside the Texans. Normally 11 a.m. on Mondays, but of course after Monday Night Football, we're doing it here on Tuesday. And you're probably wondering, why are we in weird places? Chancellor back in the station. I'm on my way back from Arlington with photographer Alex Marino. We're here doing a story at Sam Houston State in Huntsville. So we just fired up the live unit and did it from here. So Chancellor's segue, we got a couple things to get to. Let's begin with Joe Mixon. I know we got video as well. More on Mixon and his bounce back after that tough day against the Lions. He found the holes. He got after that Cowboys defense, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Matter of fact, he found the end zone 3 different times in Jerry's world. He had 20 carries for 109 yards. And, Randy, if he didn't miss that time in the beginning of the season after that Bears game where he suffered an ankle injury to that hip drop tackle, we could be talking about a guy who would be firmly in the mix for Offensive Player of the Year. He's been that good for the Houston Texans, continuing to really be – I think that Joe Mixon, when he's been on the field, he's been the Houston Texans' best player. And for a guy who was brought in over the offseason, kind of cast away by the Cincinnati Bengals, who may have thought his best days were behind him, he has certainly showed that has not been the case after another strong day.
Yeah, he was fun to watch, no doubt. He's been a leader in that locker room, on the field. He's been a mentor to many players, including even C.J. Stroud talked about what Joe Mixon has meant to him off the field as well throughout the season. Let's listen in now a little bit from Joe Mixon last night after his big day or evening, I should say, against the Cowboys.
It was a great team win. I'm glad we was able to put one together for 4 quarters. I still obviously feel like we could play better, and there's always room for improvement. But, we definitely going to take them wins or whatever, come with it. So you can never take that for granted in this league. It was a great thing to see the O-line, pretty much go out there and impose their will. I thought that, it was a time in the 4th quarter where they was like, man, let's take it to them boys. And I'm like, I went too slow, and I'm like, man, them boys trying to run it. And, pretty much them boys went down there and they was playing physical. Receivers was locked in and everybody playing pretty much 11-on-11 man football. We getting a hat on the hat, and I was just trying to do whatever I can to make the most out of it. I'm just trying to be the best the best player that I am for the team. I mean, all that other stuff, don't get me wrong, it is cool, but without them guys, there ain't no me. So I'm just thankful that, with the opportunity given, I just been making the most of it, and them guys, they just bought in with the run game and doing whatever they can to open the holes, and I just doing whatever I can to, pretty much stay in sync with them boys. So, I mean, man, I tip my hat off to them boys. They go hard for 4 quarters, and, just going out there and trying to impose their will, it's a great thing to see from, the linemen. It's a hell of a thing. I just, as a running back, I appreciate that.
All right, here on the field at AT&T Stadium after the Texans' 34-10 win. Texans now 7-4, hanging out with Brian Bearfield, Big Sarge Sports. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you as well.
Aaron Wilson, our insider for Click2Houston.com. Guys, they've come to town, mission accomplished. They win for the first time in this building in the regular season. And we were just talking, this was a big game, a stretch of 3 that are 3 winnable games. They got number 1 in the books right now. Sarge, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, and this is a game that they definitely needed, not only just for record-wise, but mentally. They needed to have this type of win, a big win like this. And, when you're talking about basketball players, you know how they say when they're off, they just need to see the ball go through the hoop one time. They just need to
get the mojo back.
Exactly. And so they needed to get this type of game to have that in their system. So going into the next 2 games, the winnable games as well against the Titans and the Jags, they should be able to get things back on track. This is definitely a game that I felt like Nico Collins being back actually helped the offense as well, and they got Joe Mixon going. And so, yes, they needed a blowout victory like tonight.
All right, let's talk about the start to the game, Aaron. We'll start with you. Right out of the gates, the pass there to Nico, beautiful. It's like, oops, penalty, bringing it back. But that was really fun to see immediate impact of Nico Collins, what Sarge was just talking about as well. It got called back, but it set the tone for the night, and they bounced right back and got that touchdown from Joe Mixon.
Right, Randy, that's a tone setter. And Nico Collins, his speed, it's a huge factor in any offense. And this guy's a matchup nightmare. They didn't even really scratch the surface of all that he can do because they wanted to slowly work him back in. And you can see how they're different as an offense because you have that threat downfield, the defense, it keeps them honest. And Nico Collins is just scratching the surface. I feel bad for him. They didn't get the touchdown. Laremy Tunsil didn't agree with the call, of course. They said he was 2.5 yards past the line. I'm not sure. I think it was more like 1. But I feel like with Nico, this is just the preview.
Let's do some quick hits. We got 3 minutes or so. Offensive line. Let's talk about that. C.J. Stroud praised the job the O-line did. I asked him about just the protection he got, the impact they had. That was great to see, too. and it carried into the second half. They got points in the second half. How about
Yes, I was glad to see that they were finally able to give CJ some time to be able to find his receivers down the field. And when you give him that type of protection, he can find the John Mechis, he can find Tank Dell, he can find Dalton Schultz, who it seemed like he got all of his receivers back on track tonight as far as being behind that offensive line and that protection, especially in the second half.
Did y'all realize the speed and the athletic ability of Derek Barnett scoop and score out of that after the 2 fumbles? Little defensive touchdown tonight. That's nice to see.
Yeah, it's a rare moment in NFL history. I wish Derek Barnett had stuck around to talk about it, but he's a man of few words. He's a man of action, though. And to see that athletic, to catch it on the hop, the hard hit from Jalen Petrie, all those things coming together, that is football playing right there. That is an incredible, incredible play that I'll never forget.
I want to circle back to Mixon. A couple minutes left. Mixon struggled against the Detroit Lions. Not all his fault. O-line responsible as well. Those holes were there. Man, from the get-go tonight in that first quarter, touchdown 1 after the Nico touchdown, or the Nico Collins touchdown was called back, and then a little bit later, Mixon again. When he's on, he's on.
Oh yeah, he's one of the most violent and more aggressive runners in the NFL. And I think that what went into last week against the Lions was, you also remember they had to change at the interior part where they put Jerry Patterson at center and Juice Scruggs at left guard. And so I think that for as much as that line was getting used to those two playing in that position, Joe Mixon, who had never played with those guys at that position, also had to get acclimated to what they were doing.
Great contact balance from Joe. And Joe is now part of the exclusive fraternity with Darian Fosters, the O.J. Simpsons, guys like Jim Brown. And he said, it's not about my stats, it's all about this team. And I also was joking with him, who's going to take who out to dinner? The offensive line or are they going to take him out?
That's a good question. Good question. All right, less than a minute. Where do they go from here? They got this. It's time to move on to the next one. You got the Titans. You got the Jags. Winnable football games. They can't take a step back. They got to put that pedal down and keep motoring.
Oh, in 2 weeks we'll be talking about the 3-game win streak by the Houston Texans.
And a 9-4 record.
Yes, exactly.
And that would be nice. I predict that as well. And then it sets up a pretty tough stretch. But, by then they're going to have a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Right. You think about the rest of the league, it looks a little more of a narrow margin now. Some of these other teams that hadn't lost a game, like the Chiefs, they've now been beaten. They beat the Bills. The Chiefs didn't. I think that the Texans are going to be in that position. They want to be in December to play meaningful football.
All right, good stuff. Texans get the win. They are moving on, 7-4 now, and they've got the Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars their next couple of weeks. Good stuff as we wrap it up from AT&T Stadium. Big Sarge, Brian Bearfield. Thank you, my man. Appreciate you. Aaron Wilson, click2houston.com. Good combo. Appreciate it, guys. All right, great conversation. That was last night after the game, of course. Chancellor, we got less than a minute. Final thoughts. They get the victory, 34-10, impressive. Now they got to move on and duplicate that coming up Sunday against Tennessee.
The Houston Texans did what they were supposed to do, dominate an inferior team and get back in the win column. They did just that on Monday night, but once again, it's about continuing that momentum and keeping that consistency, especially as they get to these next 2 games, which are extremely, extremely winnable.
All right, very good. Texans are back. They got back around 2 o'clock in the morning. They'll be off today. A short week. Of course, they resume activities coming up tomorrow with practice out at NRG Park. It's been fun here inside the Texans. For Chancellor Johnson back in Houston, I'm going to wrap things up here at Sam Houston State in Huntsville. We'll do it again next week on Inside the Texans on Monday. Have a good one.